Seeds of Ambition. The last notes of Daphne Winter's song hung in the stale air of Pineville's only bar, the Coal Dust. At 19, she wasn't even supposed to be inside, but everyone knew Daphne and her voice was the only thing bringing customers to this forgotten corner of West Virginia on Tuesday nights. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gripped the microphone, her chestnut hair falling across one eye as she smiled shyly at the scattered applause. "Thanks for listening, y'all," she said, stepping down from the makeshift stage. Really just a raised platform of wooden pallets in the corner. Frank, the bar owner, nodded appreciatively as he wiped down glasses. "Good set, Daph. Tip jar's looking decent tonight." She collected the crumpled bills and loose change, $27.35. Not much, but it would help with Grandma Pearl's medication this month. Daphne pulled her worn denim jacket tighter and stepped into the chilly October night, the coal dust from the nearby mine hanging in the air like a perpetual fog. Pineville had been dying slowly for decades. The mine employed fewer people each year, and the town's population had dwindled to just under 2,000 souls, too. Stubborn or too poor to leave. To most, Daphne was just another local girl with pipe dreams, singing cover songs at open mic nights while life passed her by. The walk home took 15 minutes, past boarded-up storefronts and houses with sagging porches. Daphne hummed to herself, composing melodies in her head as she always did. Music had been her escape since she was a little girl, since her mother had left for Charleston with a traveling salesman and never returned. She approached her house cautiously, noticing her father's truck parked at an odd angle in the dirt driveway. Vernon Winters was likely drunk again, and Daphne had learned to tread carefully on such nights. She slipped in through the back door, hoping to avoid a confrontation. The kitchen light was on, but instead of her father, she found her grandmother, sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "Hey, Grandma Pearl," Daphne whispered, leaning down to kiss the older woman's cheek. "Dad home?" "Passed out in his room," Pearl answered, her voice a gentle rasp from years of living in coal country. "How was your night, Songbird?" Daphne pulled out the money from her pocket. "Made $27. It's not much, but it's 27 more than we had," Pearl finished, patting her granddaughter's hand. "I'm proud of you." Pearl Watson had raised Daphne more than her own son had. At 72, her body was bent from arthritis, but her spirit remained unbreakable. She'd been the one to notice Daphne's talent, scraping together money for a second-hand guitar when Daphne was 12. "I got some news today," Daphne said, sitting across from her grandmother. "Remember that video I posted of me singing at the Harvest Festival? Someone shared it, and now it has over 10,000 views." Pearl's eyes widened. 10,000 people heard my granddaughter sing? "And there's more," Daphne continued, excitement making her voice tremble. "A man named Javier Rodriguez commented. Says he's a talent scout for Blue Ridge Records in Nashville. Wants me to send him more videos." Pearl's face showed a mixture of pride and concern. "Nashville's a long way from Pineville, Songbird. No, Grandma. But what if this is it? My one shot?" The old woman sighed, reaching across to tuck a strand of hair behind Daphne's ear. "Your mama had dreams of leaving, too." "I'm not Mom," Daphne said firmly. "I won't forget where I came from." A crash from down the hall interrupted their conversation, Vernon stumbling to the bathroom. Both women tensed, listening. "You should get to bed," Pearl advised. "Recording shift at the diner tomorrow, right?" Daphne nodded, gathering her tips and heading to her small bedroom at the back of the house. The walls were covered with torn-out magazine pages of her music idols. Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, Taylor Swift. Women who'd escaped small towns to tell their stories to the world. That night, she recorded 3 more songs on her phone, original compositions about coal dust and mountain mornings, lost loves and found hopes. Her voice, clear as mountain water, and with just a hint of an Appalachian lilt, poured her heart into every note. She sent the videos to the email address Javier had provided, her hand hovering over the send button for a full minute before finally pressing it. Morning came too soon. Daphne's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m. for her breakfast shift at Dot's Diner. She moved silently through the house, stepping over her father passed out on the couch, and left a cup of coffee for Pearl before heading. At Pineville was different in the dawn light, softer somehow with mist clinging to the surrounding mountains. For a moment, Daphne could see the beauty that inspired her songwriting, but the beauty faded as she approached the diner with its flickering neon sign and peeling paint. "There's my songbird," called Dot Wilson, the 60-something owner of the establishment. "Heard you killed it at the Coal Dust last night." "News travels fast," Daphne smiled, tying an apron around her waist. "Honey, in a town this small, sneezing is breaking news," Dot laughed, her cigarette-roughened voice warm with affection. The morning rush, what passed for a rush in Pineville, kept Daphne busy until about 9. As she refilled coffee cups and served plates of eggs and bacon, she hummed under her breath, working out the bridge to a new song. "Hey, Daphne," called Tommy Jenkins from his usual booth. "When you gonna be too famous to serve us old miners breakfast?" The other regulars chuckled, but there was pride in their eyes. Daphne was their hometown girl, their own claim to something special. "Y'all will always get the VIP treatment," she replied with a wink. By the time her shift ended at 2, Daphne was exhausted but determined. She had a weekly slot at the Bluegrass Corner in Woodsville, a slightly larger town 20 miles away. The pay was better, and occasionally industry people from Charleston would stop by. She borrowed Dot's ancient Chevrolet, promising to return it by midnight, and made the drive with her guitar in the passenger seat. The Bluegrass Corner was a proper music venue, not just a bar with a stage, and Daphne felt a flutter of nerves as she entered through the back door. "There she is," called the owner, Ben Tucker. "Got a good crowd tonight, Daphne. Some folks drove in from Charleston." Her set was scheduled for 8. Giving her time to warm up in the tiny back room that served as both storage and a makeshift green room. As she tuned her guitar, Daphne's phone buzzed with an email notification from Javier Rodriguez. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Ms. Winters, thank you for sharing your additional material. Your voice and songwriting show remarkable potential. I'll be in the region next week and would like to meet in person to discuss opportunities with Blue Ridge Records. Are you available Tuesday afternoon in Charleston? Best, Javier Rodriguez, Talent Acquisition, Blue Ridge Records." Daphne read the email 3 times, hardly believing the words. A real meeting with a real record label scout. She pressed the phone to her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. "Daphne? You're on in 5, Ben called through the door. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked onto the stage with more confidence than she'd ever felt. The crowd of about 50 people quieted as she took her place behind the microphone. "Evening, folks. I'm Daphne Winters from Pineville," she introduced herself, adjusting her guitar strap. "This first song is called Coal Dust Dreams, and it's for everyone who's ever felt stuck somewhere but kept dreaming anyway." As she sang, she poured every ounce of her hope and determination into the lyrics. The room fell silent, except for her voice and the gentle strumming of her guitar. When the final note faded, there was a moment of perfect stillness before the applause began. Not polite applause, but the kind that meant something had touched them. Among the clapping hands, Daphne noticed a well-dressed man in the back watching her intently. He raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement, and somehow she knew. This was Javier Rodriguez, a week early and in Woodsville instead of Charleston. Her next 3 songs earned even stronger reactions. By the end of her set, the audience was on their feet, and Javier was making his way toward the stage. "Ms. Winters," he said, extending his hand, "I decided not to wait until Tuesday. Your videos didn't do you justice." Javier Rodriguez was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with a sharp suit and an industry haircut. His smile seemed genuine. but there was calculation in his eyes as he assessed her. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Rodriguez," she managed, suddenly aware of her thrift store dress and scuffed boots. "Please call me Javier. Can we talk somewhere quieter?" They sat in a corner booth, Daphne clutching a glass of water while Javier sipped bourbon. "You have something special," he said without preamble. "A voice that tells stories, an authenticity that can't be manufactured. Blue Ridge is looking for exactly that right now. The real deal, not another overproduced pop princess." Daphne swallowed hard. "What exactly are you offering?" "A 6-month development deal. We bring you to Nashville, work with songwriters, develop your sound, see where it goes. It's a foot in the door, Daphne. Not a guarantee, but a real chance." "And if it doesn't work out?" she asked, the practical mountain girl in her needing to know the downside. Javier shrugged. "You go home with some professional experience and recordings, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think you could be something special." He slid a business card across the table. "Think about it. Call me by Monday." After he left, Daphne sat in the booth, turning the card over in her fingers. Nashville. A real chance. But it meant leaving Grandma Pearl, leaving Pineville, leaving everything familiar for a world she'd only dreamed about. The drive back home was a blur, her mind racing with possibilities. When she arrived, the house was dark except for the porch light. She found Pearl in the kitchen, waiting up despite the late hour. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Songbird," Pearl said, studying her granddaughter's face. Daphne sank into a chair. "He came to the show, the record label man. He wants me to come to Nashville." Pearl was quiet for a long moment. "And what do you want?" "I want—" Daphne's voice caught. "I want to sing. I want people to hear my songs. I want more than this town can give me." The old woman nodded slowly. "Then you have to go." "But what about you? And Dad?" Pearl reached across the table and took Daphne's hands in her own. "I've lived my whole life in these mountains. Your daddy's made his choices. But you, Daphne Winters, you have wings. And it's time for you to use them." Tears spilled down Daphne's cheeks. "I'm scared, Grandma." "Being scared means you're about to do something brave," Pearl replied, her eyes glistening. "Your grandfather used to say that before going into the mine every day." That night, Daphne couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, writing lyrics that poured out like a confession, a goodbye letter to Pineville. By dawn, she had a new song and a decision. Over the next few days, she made preparations. She spoke with Dot about leaving the diner, arranged, for a neighbor to check on Pearl regularly, and even had a rare, sober conversation with her father. "You're really going?" Vernon asked, looking older than his 45 years, the mine and the bottle having taken their toll. "I have to try, Dad," Daphne said simply. He nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Your mother would be proud." It was the kindest thing he'd said to her in years. Monday morning, she called Javier. "I'm in," she told him. "When do we start?" "Pack your bags," he replied. "I'll pick you up Wednesday morning. Nashville's waiting." As Wednesday dawned, Daphne stood on the porch of the only home she'd ever known, her guitar case and a single suitcase beside her. Pearl hugged her fiercely. "Remember who you are," the old woman whispered. "Remember these mountains are in your blood, in your voice. Don't let them change that." "I won't," Daphne promised, wiping away tears. A sleek SUV with Tennessee plates pulled up, and Javier stepped out, looking out of place against the backdrop of Pineville's faded houses. "Ready to become a star?" he asked, opening the passenger door. Daphne took one last look at her grandmother, at the mountains that had shaped her, at the coal dust in the air that had somehow made her voice what it was. "I'm ready," she said, stepping toward a future she could barely imagine, seeds of ambition finally finding soil to grow. As the SUV pulled away, Pearl stood on the porch watching until it disappeared around the bend. And inside the vehicle, Daphne Winters began mentally composing the song that would someday make the world remember her name and the small town she came from. Spotlight's glare. Nashville overwhelmed Daphne from the moment she arrived. The city pulsed with music and ambition, nothing like the quiet rhythms of Pineville. Blue Ridge Records offices gleamed with awards and platinum records, tangible, proof of dreams fulfilled. "We're rebranding you," Javier announced during their first production meeting. "Daphne Winters is too folksy. From now on, you're Daph Winter, edgier, more marketable." She hesitated, remembering Pearl's warning about staying true to herself, but nodded anyway. The next months blurred together. Voice lessons to smooth her Appalachian accent. Songwriting sessions with industry veterans who politely dismissed her coal country lyrics. A new wardrobe, new hair color, new headshots. "You're practically unrecognizable," Olivia Turner, her vocal coach, remarked one day. "Is that good?" Daphne asked. "Depends on who you're asking," Olivia replied cryptically. Unlike the others, Olivia seemed to value Daphne's authentic voice. "The industry wants to make you marketable, but marketable doesn't always mean memorable." The label paired Daphne with Ryan Foster, a rising country star, for a duet. Handsome and charming, with 3 hit singles already, Ryan became both her mentor and first Nashville heartbreak. "This town will chew you up if you let it, Mountain." "Girl," he warned after their third date, using his pet name for her. Their chemistry was undeniable, but Ryan's loyalty was to his career first. 6 months into her development deal, tensions rose. The songs Javier selected felt hollow to Daphne, nothing like the stories she'd wanted to tell. "These aren't my songs," she protested during a particularly heated session. "They're songs that will get played," Javier countered. "Trust the process, Daph." The breaking point came during a songwriter's showcase. After performing the label's approved material to lukewarm reception, Daphne made an impulsive decision. As the polite applause faded, she adjusted her guitar. "I'd like to play one more," she announced. "Something I wrote back home." She played Mountain Girl, a raw, honest ballad about leaving Pineville. No production, no polish, just her voice and guitar. The room fell silent, then erupted. Someone filmed it on their phone. By morning, the video had gone viral. By the end of the week, radio stations were demanding the song. Javier was furious and impressed. "You went off script?" he scolded, before breaking into a reluctant smile. "And it might have saved your career." Mountain Girl became her breakout hit, climbing charts and opening doors. Suddenly, Daph Winter was everywhere, opening for major tours, appearing on morning shows, being mentioned alongside established stars. Becky James, the reigning queen of country crossover, took notice, and not kindly. "Another small-town sob story," she dismissed Daphne in an interview. "Let's see if she has staying power." The challenge fueled Daphne's determination. Her debut album, fittingly titled Coal Dust Dreams, balanced radio-friendly tracks with the authentic storytelling that had made Mountain Girl a hit. It went gold in 3 months. Success brought complications. Weekly calls to Pearl became monthly. Vernon claimed sobriety and asked for money. Childhood friends from Pineville sold stories to tabloids. Ryan drifted in and out of her life, never quite committing. 1 year after leaving Pineville, Daphne stood backstage at the Country Music Awards, nominated for Best New Artist. As they announced her name as the winner, the cameras captured her genuine shock. "I want to thank my grandmother Pearl," she said through tears, clutching the trophy. "Who told me it's okay to be scared when you're doing something brave?" Later that night, at an after-party in her honor, Daphne escaped to a balcony for a moment of quiet. Looking out over Nashville's glittering skyline, she should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt oddly empty. Her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Don't forget who you were before they told you who to be." Daphne stared at her reflection in the dark window. Designer dress, highlighted hair, perfect makeup. The girl from Pineville was barely visible anymore. She'd become a star, just as she'd dreamed. But in the spotlight's harsh glare, something essential was beginning to fade. Reclaiming the melody. 2 years after her CMA win, Daphne's star continued to rise, but at a cost. Her second album had gone platinum, her tour sold out arenas, and her face graced magazine covers. But pressure mounted with each success. "We need another hit," Javier insisted during production of her third album. "Something bigger, more crossover appeal." The studio became a battleground. Sleep deprivation and anxiety led to dependency on helpers, pills to sleep, pills to wake up, drinks to calm her nerves. Ryan, now an on-again, off-again presence in her life, noticed first. "You're disappearing, mountain girl," he said after finding her disoriented in her dressing room. "This isn't you." "Maybe I don't know who me is anymore," she replied. The breaking point came during a live-streamed concert when Daphne forgot lyrics to Mountain Girl, the song that had made her famous. Social media exploded with speculation. Tabloids published unflattering photos. Her label went into damage control. That night, alone in her penthouse, Daphne called Pearl for the first time in months. "I think I'm lost, Grandma," she confessed, voice breaking. "Then it's time to come home and find yourself," Pearl replied simply. The next morning, without telling anyone, not Javier, not Ryan, not her publicist, Daphne packed a bag, got in her car, and started driving east toward the mountains. Pineville hadn't changed much in 3 years. The mine had finally closed. Jobs were scarcer, but the mountains stood eternal. Pearl welcomed her with open arms and no questions. Vernon, surprisingly, had maintained sobriety. "Your success was my wake-up call," he admitted awkwardly. "Figured if you could chase your dreams, I could face my demons." News of Daphne Winter's disappearance created media frenzy. Javier left angry voicemails. Ryan sent worried texts. But in her grandmother's kitchen, drinking tea from chipped mugs, Daphne finally breathed. She began writing again, not for radio, not for charts, but for herself. Songs about homecoming, redemption, the beauty in broken things. She visited the Coal Dust, now struggling to stay open, and performed for locals who'd known her before fame. "You sound different," Frank observed after her set. "Better, somehow." "I'm singing my truth again," she replied. 3 months into her self-imposed exile, Olivia Turner appeared on Pearl's doorstep. "The label's threatening to sue for breach of contract," she warned. "And honestly, people are worried about you." "I needed to remember who I was," Daphne explained, showing Olivia the new song she'd written. Olivia listened intently. "This is what I always heard in you," she said finally. "Pure, honest storytelling. The world needs this version of you." Together, they devised a plan. Daphne would fulfill her contract obligations, but on her terms. She'd record the new songs with minimal production, document Pineville's struggles after the mine closure, and show the human cost of forgotten small towns. Returning to Nashville wasn't easy. The industry had labeled her difficult and unstable. But with Olivia as producer, Daphne recorded Homecoming, an album as raw and honest as the mountains that inspired it. The lead single, Reclaimed, detailed her fall and resurrection. Instead of a glossy video, she released footage of Pineville, its beauty and struggles, its resilient people, including Pearl and Vernon. Critics called it brave. Fans called it authentic. The album debuted at number 3, respectable, but not the commercial peak of her previous work. Daphne didn't care. At the album release concert, she stood on stage without the elaborate production of previous tours, just her guitar and voice. 3 years ago, I left a small town with big dreams, she told the audience. I found success but lost myself along the way. This album is about remembering where you come from, and that sometimes you have to go back to move forward. As she sang Mountain Girl, the song that started it all, the spotlight illuminated Pearl and Vernon in the front row, eyes shining with pride. Backstage after the show, Ryan waited with uncharacteristic nervousness. "I'm heading back to my roots, too," he said. "Taking a break from touring, starting a small production company. Thought maybe we could collaborate. For real this time." Daphne smiled, seeing sincerity in his eyes for the first time. Later that year, Daphne established the Coal Dust Foundation, supporting arts education in Appalachian communities. She divided her time between Nashville and Pineville, recording music that remained true to her voice while advocating for forgotten towns like her own. She wasn't the biggest star in country music anymore, but she was perhaps the most authentic, a global icon who remembered her roots, a mountain girl who'd found her way home while conquering the world. "You were right, Grandma," Daphne said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "The mountains were always in my blood, in my voice." Pearl squeezed her hand. "And now the whole world can hear them singing through you."